Innovation Unplugged from the Alabama Community College System's Innovation Center takes you inside Alabama's workforce development. Join us for enlightening conversations with community leaders and industry experts showcasing experiences, addressing key issues, and celebrating successes in the workforce initiatives across the state. All right, guys, welcome back to Innovation Unplugged, another episode. We are in the Seed Creative Studio in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and we got a special guest today with us, Mr. Jason Blackwell. He's a man of many talents. You could say man, the myth, the legend. He's one of those guys. He's in that category. I'm Houston Blackwood. I'm your host today. Jason, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I look forward to it.
Yeah, and just to be transparent, when you said you could come to the studio, I didn't know you lived 3 hours away. So very much appreciated of that.
Well, I think the CTE and you are worth it, so, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, certainly the conversation. And so we know each other a pretty good while.
We have.
We met actually at the community college system in 21 or 22.
It was 22.
You guys came over and we were talking about connecting skills for success to the CRI list.
That's right. That's when I was working with the State Department of Education, and I seen some great things that y'all was doing, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, we carried that on. So, but before we get into that part of it, let's talk about who Jason Blackwell is. I know you've got a pretty big reputation or presence around the state, really around the country, probably, if I'm being honest.
I'm trying.
Looking at your resume and your information. So just give us a rundown where you came from, how you got to be right here.
Well, I was raised by a guy that was a Great Depression guy, and he was real old school and taught me from 6 years old. He told me, he's like, son, if you'll pay attention to me, I'll teach you everything I know. And for some God reason, I listened to him.
Pay attention.
Yeah. So he was a multi-trade guy, and we lived in a community with a bunch of guys that didn't know no limits. We did everything. Yeah. We didn't have enough money to hire it out, so we did welding, carpentry, locksmithing, just whatever it was. And then my daddy saw something in me that was past my recognition at the time, but I lost a set of keys because I thought I was cool. And my dad had to pay a locksmith $300.
Yeah.
And at 12 years old, my daddy realized that if I wanted my four-wheeler back, I was going to have to make my own key. And so he put me through a correspondence course, and at 12 years old, I learned how to be a locksmith, and my career just kind of started there. Daddy started taking up time with me and making sure everyone in the community that had different trades, and I just started becoming a sponge.
Okay, we're going to talk about what all you absorbed, but back up. You became a locksmith by correspondence.
Yeah, that was called the Foley Bell Saw Correspondence Course. It's now called Penn Foster, I think is what it's called.
Okay. Now I've heard both names, but describe what that, because locksmith training is very hands-on. Like
it is.
So tell us the audience how that works.
Well, all these trades are real hands-on, but I had an opportunity to be a dad that was a mechanic, and he knew a lot of the things with her. But it had a bunch of literature that would come with it, books, and you would work through the course. Okay. And for proctoring, Daddy would take me up to one of the colleges there and let the guy that kind of had a background in it show me how to exactly do it. Because I was reading about smutting with a candle and learning how to make that impression on the key, and then I just started doing it, and the books was corresponding with whatever lesson it was, and they'd send you a kit where you could follow along with it. And so I made a boat key, a four-wheeler key, and then I started picking locks around the house, at people's discretion. Sure. They knew I was doing
it at their preference. Yes.
And it become a good side hustle. I was unlocking people's cars for them. At the time it was only $10 a pop. But, for a 13, 14-year-old kid, and my daddy pulling up there with a 13-year-old kid, and like he's the one that's going to open your car, people that was.
What year was this? When you were 13 picking locks for people?
It was probably 90s, 91.
Okay. Gotcha. That's hilarious and awesome. And I totally see that. So you must have lost a key to the four-wheeler or something, or?
Yeah. Well, I lost the key to his tractor, and it pissed him off pretty good.
Okay.
So he bought the tractor key at $300, and he said, you know what? I was like, well, Daddy, he's like, well, you come up with the money. And me and him come up with, like, what if I learn how to do it?
Yeah.
And he looked into it, and one of his brothers got to talking. He's like, why don't you do this? And I just saw opportunity. So Daddy wouldn't let me play football and do all these kind of things. And so when I come home from school, I was learning different things, and it just branched off from there.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that. I think that's a lost art. I grew up the same way. My dad had his own business, but he was off work by every day by 3. So
Yeah.
when I got home from practice, there was always something to do, some kind of project. So
We kind of owned a self-sufficient farm, so there was always something broke.
you still do.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's
I got about 120 acres, and I manage it, and I've got my boys working. My youngest is 9, and he can bush hog with the best of them. You know, all of them can run them out equipment, dozers, excavators, backhoes. You know,
awesome. So let's go from 13-year-old lock picker Jason to progressing into getting out of high school. Where'd you go from there?
I decided I want to do forestry, and I turned around and after I got finished with that, I worked there for a little while and decided that my dad got like a little scholarship from the GI Bill. He got a 30%, so that included me to be able to go back to school. So I went through the medical stuff and kind of took a whole different transition. I started working with the Forestry Commission for a little while, and I was only making $22,000 with a company truck, but my sister graduated nursing program, was making 50-something around the house. So I saw opportunity to do that, so I went through that. Didn't like that.
Yeah.
And I just started coming back to what I know. Way Daddy raised me is we did carpentry, electrical, welding, and I found that I could be more enjoyable outside.
Oh, for sure.
But
you knew that you were an outdoors, hands-on.
I could just see the money at the time, and at the time, you know, where I was doing mechanic work with $20 a wheel for brakes, it just wasn't really good money there. And I was thinking the nursing, I could be inside doing the stuff and make the money I wanted, which you can, but that wasn't my personality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't frown upon the experience because I still have that medical knowledge, and it's even helped me in the fields because I got a pay increase because I was certified, and when I was on the job there, you know, they needed someone that was certified EMT, and
yeah, okay, that makes sense.
You know, so it helped.
Okay, so after your stint in the medical industry, you went back to the trades.
That's right.
Okay, what age was this?
I was in my mid-20s.
Okay, then what?
I turned around and I was working for a mill in Bruton, and I got in a wreck. I turned around and I hurt my neck. I had a semi-truck rear-end me, and it messed my neck up pretty good. It gave me severe whiplash. He took a left and kept on going, and I turned around and I wasn't able to kind of do what we was doing, and opportunity approached me. A lady offered me a job as an electrical instructor, and I politely declined that quite a few times, and she's like, just please come hear me out.
Okay.
And after the 5th time, I went and listened to her, and I got in the classroom. I was like, what am I doing?
Okay.
And,
so time out right there. So I think a lot of people in life have gone and trained and got degrees, whatever, or got into a situation. They look around, they're like, what are we doing? You know,
right.
Or like Jim from the office. What is going on? But that's what you were good at. That stuff's natural for you to know and to teach.
Well, it's one thing to know it and one thing to teach it too.
Okay.
You know, you and a bunch of kids, you know, like I was around the youth group a good bit, and you know, they got on my nerves. You know, so me fixing to go into a high school, I trained a lot of people in the mill, you know, to do what I was. I was one of the mentor trainers there, and I didn't mind, you know, training someone 30, 40 years old that's coming into it that might need to know about hydraulics or robotics or, you know, writing code. And coming in trying to teach a 9th grader or a 12th grader that's got a smart mouth, you know, I was like, this might not be for me. But I ended up loving it, dude. Like it got to be a passion. Like I saw opportunities and I saw a way to let that light bulb come on with these students. And man, that made me so passionate because I was their advocate. And I was in one really rough high school, but they never give me any problem.
I don't doubt that. You're probably even more direct back then than you are now. So what school was that, or what area was that?
That was in Monroe County.
Monroe County, okay.
Yeah, Monroeville, Alabama.
And so were you like just cycling through different schools and as
No, there was that hub there. They had a full-time industrial maintenance program and electrical program at the time.
Gotcha. All right. Where'd that take you? So you learned all that, and you learned about curriculum development, and
that's right.
It was foreshadowing for what you do now.
Well, the state of Alabama had something that I could do that I could increase my pay. At the time, I started out $35,000, you know, because I was an entry-level teacher, and I kind of went back to Athens State and got my degree there, and turned around and did the classes I needed to draw master level pay because I had my master level certification. So. And that increased my pay, and that helped me. That helped me retain myself, because I had to make a certain amount. I had everything, around the farm pretty good, but I was starting a family and,
Yeah.
raising the kids, and cost of living increases per kid.
Significantly.
You
Yeah,
know,
those do not come cheap. Okay.
but I just decided to take it as high as I could. I started learning everything I could, and I realized that when we was going to that the teacher 196-hour teacher training,
Yeah.
that I needed a lot of my coworkers didn't know how to do that. And it was about a $10,000 increase. My leadership in education started training them and mentoring them, and it started, kind of a free thing and just kind of led from there. I found that I was better at explaining stuff than the average person because I had a component of skills trades, and I'd been formally educated too, and
Yep.
I understood the classroom management side of it, and I could kind of help these guys out because a lot of these guys were a lot older than I was.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about a 50, 60-year-old guy coming in that's retired, and he's not going to put up with a whole lot, but especially with the paperwork side and something that we have in CTE education, it's a very unique individual with how you get certified and how you come in from non-traditional, and a lot of people in the school systems don't
Yeah.
understand it.
Well, I had a coworker one time. She was a chemical engineer and had children, and they were all in school.
Right.
And she wanted to be on the same schedule as them, so she went back and got the same kind of degree,
Mm-hmm.
so she could teach. And she's still teaching now. I think she's my son's engineering teacher.
Man, that's a great opportunity if you want to spend time with people and invest in people.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, she does a good job. I came straight up the teacher route, but I had over the years, a lot of folks who came back and did that,
Mhm.
that technical,
Mhm.
and just get the 5th-year certificate, basically.
That's
when
right.
They got a master's.
Mhm.
Okay, so flash forward a whole bunch of years, you created something called Activate CTE.
That's right.
Tell us about that.
Well, after working with the State Department of Education, I realized that a lot of people were still calling me, and I was still working as a teacher. And a lot of these directors in other states, I had opportunity to write a lesson that made me one of the top 5 teachers in the country for Harbor Freight's tools for schools.
Yeah.
I was able to win a $100,000 grant for the school, and what that made me is maybe an expert, I guess, in some of the things of like how to lead these students into leadership.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wanted to know how I did that. And they started calling me, and it started leading from one thing to another. And a lot of the certifications I have, like a master NCCR instructor, and that allowed me to go to these directors and helps me teach the other instructors. And being at the State Department, some of that stuff I wrote, so I know the curriculum pretty well. And then you also the certification process. And that's what a lot of hang up, especially in even other states, is how do you come from a traditional background in trades and go into education?
Right.
That can be a rigorous process, and I break that down.
Yeah. So is that what Activate CTE does?
Well,
What's your mission there?
My mission is to basically help students and teachers and educators and business and industry thrive. My main purpose is to get out here and make sure people find their purpose. And as part of my mission, we empower the students. And the way you empower your students is make sure they believe in themselves. You can't move forward until that student realizes whatever they want is attainable.
Right.
And then you equip them. How do you equip those students? You give them the opportunity, whatever trade it is, you teach them the trade. You teach them workplace skills. A lot of places rather have workplace skills than actual technical skills because they want a well-rounded student where they're going into welding, robotics, leadership. And then after you equip them with that knowledge, you present them into the opportunities. So you bring business and industry in and show them what your caliber students that you have.
So earlier in a previous episode, we had Meredith Smith. She's the newest director of
Right.
the Alabama Office of Apprenticeships.
Mm-hmm.
And she mirrored some of the same topics. She talked about skills and how soft skills are still one of the things that are missing.
People need it. I get told all the time, Blackwell, just make them where I like them.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity, that allows that student to become who they are, but also gives them respect of the employer and how to follow directions.
10-4. So when you're working through these students, do you find that often as you're working through showing them that, okay, listen, buddy, whatever you want, you really can't get, and here's a skill you can get it. Do those soft skills, that leadership ability, or just that confidence, does it come naturally as they progress through a skill and master it to their degree, or is that something you still have to teach separately all the time?
Well, I think a lot of it, the way I do, I don't know if you've seen this professional development before, but where this guy walks with someone and then turn around and he gets him in the middle of the floor. After he walks with him, he never says anything, but he gets him in the middle of the floor and he starts pushing on him. And then he turns around and the other guy pushes back. A lot of times with these students, you have to walk with them and meet them where they're at.
Okay.
And as they're doing that, you ask them critical thinking skills of like, what would you do? Like, it's easy for me to do what I do because I am who I am and I've had the experiences.
You know what you know. Yeah.
But to like the student, and I don't want them to teach them to be Jason Blackwell. I used to teach boxing classes to a guy, and he never could understand what he was doing when he was doing the same thing I was doing. Well, nobody's going to do anything better than I do it.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm myself. So I started realizing that how you replicate teaching these students is like when you give them opportunity, you ask them what they would do. Because their ideas is just as good as mine sometimes, because a lot of these trades are based off the same thing. So you teach carpentry or electrical, whatever, you still got to learn how to measure. You still got to have to learn the basic things. So you give them opportunity to do these critical thinking exercises, and they progress into leadership, and you mirror leadership yourself.
Got it. What's the average age of students you work with?
Well, since I started consulting, it's from, middle school all the way up to grown adults,
Okay.
50, 60, 70 years old.
So that middle school, is that more of a career exploration type thing, or are you teaching them real?
I'm teaching them real things. Like
Real deal?
a lot of states have middle school programs and stuff, and I can speak for myself. Like my 9-year-old can shoot a grade and turn around and run a backhoe about as good as I can. You know,
Okay.
so if you trust them, now I've got bit in the butt a couple of times with students in the school system. Where I wasn't their parent that. I trusted them a little too much, but you still got to give them opportunity. And
Yeah.
I think that I've worked with kids in third grade that have the opportunity, and they very impressive. So the mindset is there for a lot of them. It might not be for every single one of them, but you trust them a little bit and give them a project, they can do it.
You think that's what's missing in our schools?
I do.
And I can say that because I have a teaching degree. I spent my time,
Yeah.
15, 13 years in K-12, mostly high school education, but we spend so much time meeting standards
Yeah.
that have to be met, that are academics, and they're good. I mean, people
Yeah,
need to
I agree.
read and write to a proficient level, but
We took project-based learning out of the schools.
Yeah.
We're trying to put it back in there now, but the way my mind and a lot of people's mind are set up is like I have to have something that stimulates me. If you give me 1,000 math problems, I'm probably going to look at you and be like, I doubt it. But you give me something to build, it might have 1,000 math problems inside of it, and I can do it. It makes more sense to me.
Yep. So folks like you, and I had a ton of those students when I was in the classroom, and they were brilliant kids.
Right.
But you could tell they come to school and their jeans were dirty, their boots were dirty, had mud all over because they've been doing stuff before they ever got to you.
Exactly.
And that's really what they wanted to be doing the whole time.
Yep.
And they were nice, respectful, and plenty smart, but they had a different learning style.
I think if we would embed more math and science, which Alabama's done a really good job of that. You go through electrical class or you go through a carpentry class, you're going to get science out of it.
Yeah.
And you're going to get math out of it. And I think they need to do that way more. And they do labs. Like I know a lot of elementary teachers, but they, like you said, they're so worried about testing that they lose the component of actually learning.
Yep. Have you ever been to the Alabama School for Cyber Technology Engineering in Huntsville?
I have.
Yeah, I toured there a while back, and Matt Massey came on the show on this podcast once. But when I toured it, they were building guitars, and there was some music theory behind it, and there was some woodworking behind it, but there's also a lot of math.
Exactly.
Which is really cool, and the way they did stuff, and like everything was embedded.
Yes.
Like if I walked away from there, intentional, but everything was intentional, but everything was embedded. Like you couldn't tell where one thing started and one thing ended. It was really cool. What keeps that from being the mainstream type of education?
I think testing.
Yeah. Having to meet a certain test every year.
Yeah, I think globally, I think we look at our test scores and stuff, and then of course your ACT stuff. And I'm proud that they put the work keys in there, and that's more traditional, like things we're looking for in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
But testing does it gets
Yeah.
in a way, globally. We want to match up with other systems and stuff, and really and truly, if we concentrate, we're a powerhouse. These people that used to not even graduate out of the sixth grade. My dad was one of those until later, but he called it his common sense.
Yeah.
He could figure out stuff, and I saw him make fools of 20-year engineers.
Yeah. I think Rick and Bubba always said the superpower of common sense
Yes,
was gone.
exactly.
It's gone. And my dad was always that way too. He was like, "Can you just take a deep breath and look at that,
Yeah,
and you'll see what's going on."
We think
there.
so much in a box in education now that's what's been helps me and helps people is think outside the box.
Yeah.
We don't have to be stuck in the box. How do you do some things? My kids get on YouTube sometimes and like, Daddy, look at this. This guy built this truck backwards. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way he was thinking. It's an opportunity, and
Yeah.
there's no telling how much that guy made off being creative.
Yeah. Do you often think with your own sons or your students, do you ever just say, "Hey, I need you to do X, Y, Z," but give them no directions, like no steps?
I do that all the time. So what I do with my own students personally is I make sure they have that safety component of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Everything else is limitless.
Okay.
I have personally got humbled by my 11-year-old.
Okay.
We was taking the backhoe tires off, and they're 300 or 400 pounds a piece, and I lifted them up and put them on back on my F-250, which was about 5 foot tall, 4.5 foot tall.
Yeah.
And I thought I just looked over at him, and I was sweating and hustling, and he was like, "We could have just hooked the trailer up and just rolled them up there." I was like, "Yeah, that would have probably been a little bit better idea."
On the ramp.
Yeah. So giving them no limits helps them think.
Yeah.
Now, I was very blessed to have about 4 people in my life that could fix anything. It didn't matter what it was, and I screwed it up. And that's something I had to realize really early on in my teaching career. It was way easier for me to just get in there and do it for them and help them. But you don't learn anything unless you go through the fire. So you breaking something and realizing that might cost you something, you learn a very big lesson that experience. That's what experience is about.
What would you call that? And I've heard people say that, and maybe I'm just paying attention to that concept more lately. I don't know why, but like just
Fort Knox, learning by Fort Knox.
what does that mean?
It means that you learned it the hard way.
Okay.
And I have.
You mean like Knox? Okay, yeah. I'm stupid.
Oh, you're
Sorry,
fine.
a little slow.
I got upset one time and hit a hammer on a cast iron block on a tractor and busted the block there.
Yeah.
It cost me about $2,500.
Uh-huh.
And hard lesson to learn, but I don't get mad when I do things. When I start seeing myself elevated above 60%, I start walking away from a project.
Elevated above.
And you said something earlier that I want to hit on there. Being intentional.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big aspect of this education, especially if you're a CTE teacher, is being intentional with your student. There's individual learning that can happen in shops and classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to pick those students out and see what you have to notice those little things. And when you notice those little things about the student, and one of the things that I did with my classes is like, what are you interested in? I did a career inventory myself.
Yeah.
I pulled every student up there to my class, my desk, and I still do it now when I'm consulting. Like, I ask these teachers, like, what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
If you can bring that passion out and that person can find their purpose, that's the same thing what you do with CTSOs. You find something that these kids are passionate at and you plug them into these CTSOs and they excel.
That's something I'm working through right now with my staff on this team, the Innovation Center team. Is they're all wicked smart and all great personalities, and they show up, they get up and they show up and they do a good job. But I'm curious, like if they're really the job they were hired to do, if they like it, if that's really in their wheelhouse, or it was just something that fit them at the time, and now they've all matured. We've all been together for at least a year, so I'm curious, like what do I need to do to evolve them into a different role that they might like on the team? If there is one, but understanding them, and I'm not with them enough to, I'm not with them every single day, right? But I think that's a powerful thing, and even looking at like students or looking at your team as adults on a work team, and maybe even in your own, like your family, like what are they interested in and how can I level them up? into something else, and give them a job they got to do. They need to make a check, they need to provide, but what would they be most happy doing?
Right.
And it's a little tricky in the state agency to bob and weave people around in different things. But
Steve Jobs was talking about one time in his speeches, I don't hire people to think like I think.
Yeah.
You let people be creative there. And if you hire a good team, you don't have to worry about them. You don't have to micromanage them, and they'll do explosive things. And that's one of the reasons you need to try to pick out, like me, when I'm building a team, I really try to pick out some great people that might not even see something in themselves.
Yeah, I've got 2 on my team, and I've told them this. They drive me crazy because the questions they ask, I never think of those things. I'm like, well, why did I not think of that?
Right.
But they're really good because it's like their way of thinking is almost like a perfect Venn diagram. If I was an architect, everything would be a square, because I'm zero creative, but it would be a building that would have offices, right? But they would, they do such a good job, and the whole team does, of putting all their knowledge and their thoughts and the way they see it into the bundle and making it work.
Yes.
And so now you have this perfect solution, and thank God for them. I probably wouldn't survive if I didn't. So go ahead.
I work with a company, and they did this at the State Department of Education, but it's called 5 Voices, and knowing your strength of your voice really helps. That kind of tells you what kind of personality you are.
Okay.
And that kind of helps you know where you plug into the team. And when you're building a team, that's important to know what your personality your team is. They're real laid back. I'm personally a connector. I'm the guy that's like, hey, I know a guy, because I like to help people.
Okay.
And you got a lot of people that strict by a deadline. I'm like, why'd you create that deadline? What is it? We going to paper on Friday, or like where did you get that number at?
I like that, knowing who you are and how you think. There's a thing we did at Calhoun one time called emergenetics.
Yep.
And it was your behavior profile, but also your thinking profile.
Right.
And I actually did it in a county school system as a principal, and I did it again at Calhoun about 4 years apart. And some of my indicators changed, and my creativity had gone up. My creative thinking ability had gone up because the job I had to do in the college, every day was different.
Right.
In the school, it's pretty routine, right?
Oh, yeah.
You got the same problem,
Right.
same time of year, same solution, whatever.
Exactly.
As far as management goes, but at Calhoun, it was a lot different, and I noticed that. But it also showed how you would respond. Like where you, like if you didn't like something, were you going to express it, or just not like it and be quiet?
Right.
Or were you, if flexibilities? It was really cool. We haven't done that on this team in a while. I wish we would. How do you sell your Activate CTE? How do you promote that into industries, into the schools, and then to the public in general? How do you mesh all that up?
Well, I know a lot of the school systems, and the school systems is normally what contacts me. So after I figure out what the school system needs, I start looking at these business and industries that's around locally and see what the community. You're supposed to look at your data anyway to see what jobs are available in that area and what is the need. And then you start expressing interest in these companies and like, what does your pipeline look like? And a lot of people don't even know what that pipeline is. They don't even realize that there's a school that's 5 minutes from them that's got 45 industrial maintenance students, and they're looking for maintenance kids.
Right.
And it's a lot of footwork right now, but it's a lot of opportunity out there, because that's what we're doing. We're bridging that gap, and we turn around and creating this pipeline. And you had mentioned something earlier. I think the further down we can push the pipeline in education, where that student knows where he wants to be in 5th grade, and kind of let him guide himself in there, giving him opportunity. Alabama is one of the better states that I know of, like with dual enrollment opportunities, certification processes, and opportunity to go right to work. And that's what students need today. Our generation, of this generation, don't need any breaks in paths. One of the things that made me successful as a CTE teacher is I had a smooth transition from my classroom to community college, or from my classroom to workforce. Everyone wanted my students, or the college wanted my students if they wanted to do that, which I encourage college. It might be at a later date, whatever looks best for you. I always encourage college, because something about a 2-year degree helps someone become a manager, a foreman.
Yeah.
In our society But I try to put the word out there, and I'm trying to get bigger, and I'm trying to help more people.
Mm-hmm.
I go on the West Coast more than I do on this side.
Really?
Yeah, I'm very heavily in Oregon and New Mexico and California. I started working with a lot of the Chamber of Commerce's, and a lot of times Chamber of Commerce knows what they're, because the small businesses normally are members of the Chamber of Commerce, and they know they might have 200 members,
Mm-hmm.
and then turn around, they know what their community needs. So that's one of the first places I stop at, is to understand what is the need of the community, and most of the time the Chamber of Commerce really knows what their need is.
I've had that thought for a while, not new to me. I didn't create it, but there's industry needing workers, and then there are people needing jobs, and then there's the training agencies over here, and there's this bubble, and there's this gap. Like they're not squeezed together, right? And so then, but in that middle are the chambers of commerce, economic development associations, all those groups who are wicked smart and have all the tools, and they're pulling one or two at a time. But it's really hard for them to get all three squeezed together at one time. And we have one in our office now, Melody Witten. That's her. She is the economic development for the system.
Right.
But we're also working through our marketing director, Kayla, on the chambers of commerce, and we've had those conversations. It's like, well, what are these three groups doing? How can we help you squeeze them together?
Exactly.
And that, because the chambers should know if they're a workforce chamber, which commerce means people are spending money and hiring jobs, whatever. So that's the biggest thing I've worked on for about the last year's thought. Well, how do we get those groups together? Because I'm tired of being in the education world and people screaming when I go over here, and I don't know, So on the West Coast, like obviously, could be things a lot different than Alabama,
Right.
or even the East Coast. What do they say out there? What are their biggest gaps, or what are their biggest concerns about the next workforce?
Well, a lot of the places out there don't have as readily available students in CTE programs. They're just now, I wouldn't say getting started, but they're lacking in some of that because they're more academic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to create more workforce development kind of things for business and industry to know that they need to have that specific person to go to these high schools, to recruit these people, to plug them into internships.
Okay.
To plug them into maybe even paid internships during the summer. So workforce development is a huge thing on the business and industry side, and then helping principals understand that they need these people coming into their schools, giving these lectures, more or less grooming these students of like interviewing them, like what opportunities can I create for them?
Yeah.
And then they pay for the stuff. Like one of the biggest things that we have in CTE is the lack of funds for consumables.
Mm-hmm.
They can get me out, like when I was working in Monroe County, they had me $400 something thousand worth of trainers. That's great, but like a bearing that slips on and off there is a lot different than when you got a beat off in a mill. Then you just got to sweat, blood, tears, and everything.
And break it to get it out.
So in electrical, you go through your consumables like weldings, rods, and they try to do some of this virtual, but nothing supplies it, like manual. And these business and industries have a lot of this stuff that's scrap.
Yeah, that's still good to us. Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. Like you give me a 6'2" before, I love it.
Give me all your scraps. Well, that's very true. We're blessed with Skills for Success to have, we're a line item in the state budget, so we've got lots of dollars to contribute to those consumables for our labs, right? And that's been a big thing. But now we're getting into we're launching Propane Tech next week, which is like about a $20,000 kit if you bought everything to use, or about 17. And plumbing is a little bit more than that. Chains, vices, drills, and saws, and all that. The consumables are not that much really, but to be able to use the consumables, you got to have. So it's a thing for us. Like how do we get that to every college? But those consumables we've had, and it's been pretty good for us. When Activate CTE goes out, I think this is a question I'm missing the answer to. When y'all go out, are you always teaching the technical skills, or are you bringing in curriculums from the area that fit? How does that work?
Well, it's depending on what their state needs, So let's say I know Alabama like the back of my hand, and we're in Alabama. So NCCR would be one of the main curriculums in Alabama. So trying to make sure they understand the curriculum, make sure they're certified to teach the curriculum, and making sure they deliver it correctly. So you say in Oregon, they might have something completely different, and you try to figure out what fits those communities. And I do a lot of talking with business and industry too, like what do you need?
Okay.
And I try to find a curriculum that closely aligns that, and then we try to send it to the State Department. It's like, this needs to be on the approved list.
Okay, gotcha. So you're less of a technical instructional group than you are just a consultant to connect all the dots.
Yes.
Okay,
and we train people too. If they need seminars, professional development, or if they need to learn how to set up. A lot of times these people get this money and not have a teacher, and they might have a background in elementary education, but need to equip this electrical shop or this industrial maintenance shop. Well, they don't. They're in over their heads, and they don't want to just go to these vendors and like, what do I need? Because these vendors are out to spend. They're not all created equal. A lot of them just want to sell stuff.
Oh yeah,
because that's a paycheck in their pocket, and it looks good for them. But what do you really need to spend this money on? So we go out and make sure that people are spending the funds appropriately, and we're just really there to help. And then as your students, I make sure that I maybe try to teach a class, especially if it's a new teacher and I'm mentoring that teacher. I show them how to teach the class, how to not just take that book and open it up and just read verbatim.
Yeah.
How do we take this into the shop? And it's a different scenario as classroom management while they're sitting down. Kids are used to sitting down, coming in, sitting at a desk. But you turn around and take them out in a 15,000 square foot shop. I mean, they're throwing everything, licking everything. I could tell you stories that would just shake your head. And like, most of it's seniors that do, crazy things. But showing a teacher that a man that's come out of being 30 years retired electrician coming in, he's got a bunch of 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, and he might have 40 students in there. How do you control 40 students in a shop setting?
A lot of prayer.
You're right.
Maybe.
A lot of them leave, but I try to get in there before they do leave, because a lot of these guys are really, really good and they got a lot of things to offer, but the administration don't know how to help them.
No, because they're also, and being an administrator, like, what you know, and a lot of times CTE is not it. If you're not blessed to grow up in that world. Have you seen the lab plans for Skills for Success, carpentry, electrical, plumbing, or
I have not.
You haven't? I think you would love it. And NCCR is a good course, but I cringe a little bit when I see it because sometimes it's so long. Like, it's good when you get to the technical part of it, but it seems like it takes forever to get through the first part. I would love to show you at some point our lab plans. Just right over here in Hillcrest High School, we're filming a commercial next week. Seed Creative, where we are now, they're filming a commercial for us. We've built these 4 houses, and Carlos Acker, he's the CTE director. Do you know him?
I don't think so.
He was on the show a while back, maybe a year ago. But they built these 4 houses, and they're framed on centers, and every window, every door is got all their headers and right. But they stacked them up 4 in a row, and they're going to walk through basically and modify it a little bit so they can get the creative commercial. But they're going to have. They're built by the carpentry students. They're going to be wired. Lights are going to work. Bulbs are going to be on. There's going to be a sink and a toilet set, and they're going to be having flooring going on it too.
Right.
So they can do all 4 of those. So our students, through the Skills for Success curriculum, can do framing, wiring, plumbing, and flooring. Not to mention the heavy equipment and all those different things. So, and all those are 2-day labs, except for flooring. It's actually 8 because it's 4 different types of flooring. So you're looking at right around, if they went straight through, about 3 weeks of training to get all that. And now they're really good for a residential contractor, right? Or maybe even going out on their own with somebody that's kind of a mentor. So I love to show you that, because when you get down there in your area, we work with all those schools, and all of our courses are on the CRI list.
Yes, right.
Everything we have is on a CRI list except for some of the things like for the League of Municipalities, right? But everything's in there. And I think we're now attached in every category.
That's awesome.
Yep. So there's nothing really that we can't do. So I want to be. That's not really why I brought you on, but I want Skills of Success to be one of those tools in your toolbox.
Yes.
It doesn't fit everywhere, but it fits a lot of places. Right?
It does. I've seen so much. I've had the opportunity to teach some of them at Reed State.
Okay.
And
good.
So they not only are you teaching them something, but you're giving them exposure to it, and it's helping them. And there was a company that was given 50 cents per hour raise if they would come through some of our certifications or some of your certifications.
Yeah, that happens a lot. We had a heavy equipment academy one time, and those guys I think were making $5 more an hour if they held those certificates.
Yep.
Brand new hire.
You figure $5 at 40 hours a week. That's a nice little increase.
And that's the first 40.
Yeah,
exactly. You're going to get some.
You got a lifetime of it after that.
Well, overtime and all that, and so it's not uncommon for our kids to do pretty well. And I say kids, students in general. They might be 25, might be 28 years old. Here's a loaded question. Go ahead.
I was going to tell you, my daddy always said that money isn't everything, but it's a warm friend to have.
Right. My grandmother had crocheted. She passed on. My mom just passed, but it was on my mom's wall. It said, "Poverty is no disgrace, but decidedly inconvenient." Mm-hmm. That was a lot to cross stitch, but I remember that, and it took me forever to understand what that meant as a little kid.
Uh-huh. We understand it well now, though, don't we?
Yeah, it goes fast. So sometimes I'm gonna say this, I should stop saying this out loud, but we get not in trouble, but like people look at us and say, "Why do you spend so much time and money in the high schools with Skills for Success? Why are you spending so much time there?" And there are certain cases where a kid takes too many courses that don't really lead to an outcome. Mm-hmm. But for those juniors and seniors, what would you say to someone who is a decision maker on giving dollars to training programs around the state? What would you say to those decision makers about how important it is to invest in that career exploration and career prep for those students using whatever available dollars?
Well, I'm going to tell you, their life depends on it. Mm-hmm. That student between 11th and 12th grade, they don't know what they want. They don't have any purpose. A lot of times their families are dysfunctional, and they need something that they can invest everything they got in. Mm-hmm. Right now, they might not be in love. They might not have any direction or anything, and they're going to look for opportunity. And you mm-hmm. can give them an opportunity, especially a way to make money. They're going to be set for life.
Yeah. And I think I know the answer. I followed you on social media and some of your posts, and you had a post about a young guy come up to you, or young guys in general. They say, "I'm a man now. I'm 18," right? And your post is really long, but spot on. And you walk through what does it really mean to be a man? And it's not turning a certain age.
But I got so tickled at that kid. He come up there all strutting his chest, all poking there. Guess what? Do I look different, Mr. Blackwell? I was like, no. I turned 18. I'm a man today. And I was like, oh, okay. Then I went over. I was like, was your mama still paying your cell phone bill? All these things like you're going through there.
Yeah, and I love that because it's so true. But when you were talking about what you try to do through Active ACT is empower and equip them, but how much of that confidence comes from putting a couple of 2x4s together and making a wall?
Well, when you can set short-term goals and all of a sudden you see that you can do it, mm-hmm. and you look back in pride, I still go back to something I built when I was 18 or 16, I used to work on a bridge, and I can tell my kids I did that. It gives them an opportunity to have pride in something, and you'd be surprised what that does, even from a leadership component of I want to do more of this. This makes me feel really good. I did that. Nobody else helped me do that. Mm-hmm. And that empowers these students to the point that you can't believe. And then when they start believing in themselves, the sky's the limit with it, because they're very creative. I don't know if you noticed anything about that generation. They're not lazy. Well, some of them might be lazy. Some of them make me a little ill, but...
Well, they said that about us, too.
Yeah, exactly. Every generation, I heard of guys we said that about the 50s generation and 60s, so it's inevitable we're going to say about it. But so I've stopped looking at it from my point of view, and I started trying to look at it from their point of view, but I don't think they've had very many people believe in them. Mm-hmm. And I can say this from experience as a CTE teacher. And once you start believing in them, giving them a little purpose, they take off.
Yeah, the question I always come back to is if you give them that knowledge and they look around and you give them the skills too, and they say, okay, well, I did this. And internally, I think they have to say at some point, well, what else can I do? Right. If I can do that, that was hard. That was hard 3 weeks ago. Now I'm doing it repetitiously. Mm-hmm. What else can I do?
Exactly.
And I think if we capture that and give them that mindset, now they're unstoppable.
Well, so you got to take an inventory of what you know, and then you got to critique it and then realize how many other trades that fits into. I don't want to call myself a liar, but when I was working shutdowns and stuff, they would get rid of the carpenters, and the other people would come in and well, you know how to do that? And absolutely. Which I had a background in some of it. My dad would, and I would come and I'd get after it and learn it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things. I think this comes from Nick Saban. Since we're in Tuscaloosa, I have to talk about him for a second. But there's a lot of free stuff you can do.
Yeah.
like show up on work for on time or before, make sure you're picking up after yourself. There's so many things that you put in there that gets you recognized that's free. It don't cost you anything. It's just takes a little bit of your time.
Yeah. Late last night, I had a conversation with my son. We were both sitting on the counter. He was on the counter. I was on the island. And he was 16, just been driving. And we were talking about, I said, hey, how are you handling everything? He's in AP classes and playing 2 sports. And he said, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes I feel like I got it all figured out. And about half the time, I'm just making sure I get everything in front of me. And I said, bud, that's just wait 30 years. You're going to be asking the same questions, because sometimes you just got to get up and you got to show up and then keep it in front of you.
That's half the battle.
Half the battle. And so it was a long conversation that I didn't expect. And I really wanted to go to bed. And then I was wondering, like, he's got all these friends. I'm like, well, who's telling those kids that? And they all got good daddies, and in his circle, they're really blessed. But like out there in the world, like in the K-12, and do we have time to tell them that? So, buddy, just get up and show up. Are we doing that enough?
I think if you're a teacher, you need to look at it that you're their lifeline, and you need to, just like you was talking about the funds. Why should I pour into people, pour into students? Because their life depends on it. Like it's literally a life or death situation out there. That one moment could impact them for the good or for the bad.
Yeah, I saw a study one time about homelessness, and it said how many folks who are adults out in the world who are homeless, what happened to them. And a lot of times it was like one tiny situation that just cascaded into this nasty waterfall
Domino
of
effect.
Reasons. And that's why they're still, and they can't get out of it, And so one of our guests in a previous episode was talking about the number of kids who are 18 to 24 who are not engaged, either in the workforce or in education or training, and how to cut that in half. That was their goal for the next couple of years, is investing in that age group, which is our age group too, like skills of success and CTE, getting those 18-year-olds out with some kind of credential. It's crazy stuff.
We have one of the best set up systems to go out in the United States and put a lot of these people to work. We have to create an opportunity in which we're doing that, but we also have to create an opportunity to make sure that these students know that they can do it.
Yeah, to know they can. Yeah, you're spot on. All right, so final thoughts, like in 5 years, man, Activate CT's blown up and you've got a team, whatever. You're working with all different groups. What are you toasting to on a Friday afternoon? You get back home, you've done the thing all week. What are you toasting to?
That we made a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
We helped them communicate that their needs and their wants and desires, and we help people make families and make a good living. I feel like we can keep on the process is there. We just got to have somebody to be a catalyst, and I'm going to try my best to be that catalyst to try to activate it throughout the entire country.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you. Let us be one of your tools where possible.
I look forward to working with y'all.
College system and the state in general. So, final thoughts.
Just invest in people. Make sure they thrive. Every opportunity, don't be a stranger. Even if you're in Walmart, you take an opportunity to make a difference in somebody's lives.
Got it. You said make a difference about 10 times in the last 30 seconds, and I love it.
I like it.
Maybe that's what we titled this thing, but that's what we're after. I think that's what we want to do when we wake up every day. Well, good. Well, Jason, thanks for making the drive up. Thanks for giving your time and your knowledge, and I think this won't be the last time we have you on in some way. For all our listeners out there, thanks for listening again. This has been another great episode of Innovation Unplugged. Remember to like, subscribe, and share on your podcast platform. Have a good day.